Welcome to Sacred Magic. Violet is on a quest to bring sacredness back into our everyday experiences. Anyone can have an extraordinary life when they are able to tap into their sacred magic within. Violet and her guests will be sharing their divine passions, inspirations, and stories of connecting with their sacred magic. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Vialet Rayne.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Vialet Rayne, and my guest today is Joy Vernon. We have met with her before. She used to be part of Denver. Joy is an astrologer, a tarot reader in Washington. She formerly served as the organizer of the Denver Tarot Meetup and the Denver Tarot Geeks, and now she runs the Greater Seattle Tarot Meetup. She brings her expertise and practiced familiarity to her specialty of esoteric tarot, which layers astrology and qabalistic symbolism onto the traditional images. Don't miss an abundance of articles on her blog and tutorials on her YouTube channel so you can learn more about her. We'll have her website towards the bottom. I'm excited today because she's going to read my astrology chart. So you guys are going to find out more about me than you probably want to know today. But I'm excited for this podcast because astrology can bring us lots of insights to challenges and blessings and opportunities when you have a really good astrology reader that can give you that. And there are many different forms of astrology too. That's what I've learned. There's not just one. There's like several different approaches. So Joy, I'm excited to hang out with you today.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for inviting me. I'm super excited to be doing this with you. So do you want to dive straight into your chart, or do you have any questions you want to go over beforehand?
I know that astrology can give us insights of some of the challenges we'll have in this lifetime, and the different information of the houses. Now, what I do know about my chart, if you're watching the video, you may not be able to see it, or you're listening, but a lot of my stuff is on one side of the chart. And so when astrologers look, I'm in all these certain houses on one side, so it's not spread out. So I look forward to finding out what all that means.
Okay, awesome. Let me go ahead and share. Do I have permission to share my screen?
Let's see here. How do I do that? Because I would love to be able to do that on here. So participants, and then allowed to record. I'm just gonna make you a co-host, so then
that'll
maybe
work.
that'll help.
That'll do it. Okay. I don't know if it gives me, oh, that worked. Okay. So let me share my screen. And what I've done here is I've pulled up your chart. I use astro.com. There's very fancy softwares that you can buy that have a lot of features. I like using Astro because it's very simple, and I think the charts are very easy to read, and it's really accessible for students. And so I figure, why not show people how much you can get out of a free program, if you're a teacher of astrology. And so I'm probably in the minority thinking that way, but there you have it.
I love that. I love that.
So as we can see, and your chart is not too terribly compact. You do have all of your planets on this side of the chart from the 5th house on up through the 10th. And so we can definitely see that section of the chart there. And then the only things we have outside of that area are the South Node and Chiron, which we probably won't have time to talk about. One of the things that I found for people that have that's still a fairly spread out part of the chart. I tend to look at above and below and left and right. The horizon is the ascendant descendant, and so that marks the eastern horizon where a planet or the sun at dawn or whatever would rise, and then the descendant would be the western horizon where the sun or moon or a planet would set. And so you have the majority of your planets above the horizon and only 3 planets below the horizon. And some real simple interpretations of that is above the horizon tends to be a little more extroverted or a little bit more outward looking or some things like that. So take from it what you will. And then the left and right is marked by the midheaven here and the IC here. IC means imum celi, which is a fancy Latin phrase. It just means the bottom of the sky, and this is the top of the sky. And so the mid or the it's the highest point with the high noon point, and this is the best way to remember. This is the high noon point, and this is the midnight point. And so this is what is directly overhead. And so with, again, you had 7 above and 3 below. This up and down divides the wheel again. And so when we look at it that way, you still have 2 planets over on the left side, and that gives us 8 on the right. And so these energies on the left side of the chart are rising and coming into being. They culminate or peak here, and then they are releasing and letting go this direction. So these things are still coming into being, so to speak, for you. And that's Saturn, which is rules and regulations. It is the ruler of your sun sign in Capricorn, and Jupiter, which is wisdom and benefit and counsel, wise counsel, leadership, teaching, things like that. So a lot of those things are actually kind of on a perpetual state of coming into being for you and still growing, and still you're still striving towards those things. Whereas all the other planets have achieved their greatness and are releasing, kind of like you would think of a fruit releasing seeds, or a flowering plant releasing seeds or something after it's bloomed. And so one of the things that I have found, for instance, is that people with a lot of planets on the right hand of the chart tend to be teachers, because they are disseminating all the experiences and knowledge that they've gained throughout their life. And so I think it's really cool that the majority of your planets are in that more like I'm releasing all that I have achieved, and yet at the same time most of your greatest achievements are still coming into being, which makes you it's not like the type of teacher that just has one thing to teach and then kind of gets over it after a while. It's like you are perpetually learning and gaining more, and incorporating that into what you teach and how you teach and all of that kind of stuff.
I love that. I love that. My daughter says, "Can you stop? Quit creating." And I can't. Constantly writing new classes. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's look at some of our major placements. So as you probably know, and most of your watchers are probably familiar with, the 3 main characteristics for personality, the 3 main indicators for personality are the sun, moon, and rising sign or ascendant. And so you've got your sun here in Capricorn, your moon is down here in Virgo, and we've got that Aries ascendant. And so I'm going to try to go over this quickly. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I do want to mention it because it is so important, but I know we're trying to be tight on time too.
Right.
So very simply, the rising sign, your personality comes in these 3 layers, and the rising sign is the first layer that people get to when they meet you. And so that's Aries. And so that's bright and cheerful and charismatic and a real go-getter, self-starter, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, starting new class. You said you do new classes all the time. That's that Aries energy right there working for you. So that's layer 1, how other people see you or what you really prefer to present to the world. And then your midheaven, well, not your midheaven, your sun, which is close to your midheaven. We'll get to that a little bit later. The sun is the core identity, and that's Capricorn, and we all know the Capricorn things: hard worker, very professional, likes to build systems and structures, and so that is the next energy that people find with you. Now, the third layer, as people get to know you, will then be the moon, and that is the emotional self. It's also the private self. So it's after they've gotten to know you better, when you've invited them in, that's when they get to the moon energy. When you've invited somebody into your inner space, that'll be the moon energy. And that can come out with the average person. They would have to get to know somebody fairly well and invite them in. It can sometimes come out if you meet somebody and just end up getting along with them and spend a lot of time just talking to them. I imagine a party that goes really late and you end up just like sitting off to the side with one person just talking. It's like that can be that moon energy and how that kind of plays into your life. Even if they're new to you, you've really gotten more intimate with them. And that's kind of that lunar energy. It also is our intuition. And one of the things I think about, well, there was something I was going to say and I can't quite remember it, so I'm hoping it'll come back. But one of the things I was thinking about with you is that there's something a lot more integrated in the way I think. Well, I guess that's what I was thinking, because anybody that works one-on-one with somebody, that was kind of the metaphor. That's where I was going. That was the metaphor of just like, and that when you take somebody aside at a party and get to talking with them, when you're a reader or when you are a teacher like that, you have to get into that space all the time. And so whereas the average person, that might be a deeper layer that's harder to connect with, for people that are readers or that do a lot of one-on-one work with somebody, or that are teachers and are particularly teaching more soul related types of things, your moon is really going to come out considerably. And so what have you got here but moon in Virgo? And so that is, Virgo is very structured and organized and detail oriented, and explains things really clearly and has a real sense of order to things. So again, you've got fabulous energies for a teacher, because there is the excitement and charisma when people first meet you. There's a lot of professionalism and you know how to structure things. And so there's a lot of respect that people have almost right away with you. And then when you really start sharing, that's where your moon comes out, and your passion for the details and the how to that goes into this stuff. So you can talk about the most abstract stuff in the world, but you're going to come at it from a very how to, these are the steps to get there type of approach. So I've never taken a class with you, but now I want to.
I love that. I love that. How cool.
So, and do you feel like that's matching kind of a little bit of the way that you approach things, the way that people, like when people say, this is what I liked about your classes, is that the kind of things you hear from people?
I do, because I write books for all my classes, and I've had students tell me that they love to take classes from me because it's very structured, it's very organized, it's very easy to follow, that I give them very simple steps. It's not scattered and disorganized. It kind of flows in such an order that it's easy for them to integrate it. And I also love to give people practical tools like, yeah, we can look at the abstract, but what does that mean in our everyday life? How do we use it today to make a difference? And I think that's why students love to come to my classes. And I love to give them resources. Like, I'm not going to teach you something without you walking away with a book that you can reference later and look at it and follow it. So it definitely is my teaching style.
I love it. I love it. Well, and that leads us directly to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is your Capricorn placements. And so you have 4 planets in Capricorn. You have so first of all, let's kind of zoom in here so we can see this clearly. Venus here is at 29 degrees of Sagittarius. That's that blue tick mark there. Then Mars here is at 3 degrees of Capricorn. That's that one. The sun is at 6, almost 7 degrees. That's there. And Mercury here is at just shy of 14 degrees. And your midheaven's at 14, 18. So we see Mercury right there, that little blue line right on the darker line of the midheaven. So if we take a look, and then the 4th planet that you have in Capricorn is Saturn over here at 29 degrees of the sign. And so we have Mars, which is exalted in Capricorn. So Mars is highly productive in Capricorn. We have the sun, which is your core identity. We have Mercury, which is communication. And Mercury is our communication. It's how we learn. It's how we teach. It is our writing, our speaking, our however you get info across to somebody or receive info best. That's going to be represented by Mercury. And then, of course, Saturn over here is going to be the ruler of Capricorn. So it is also well placed. So you have a really nice grouping of planets there in that sign spread out throughout the full expanse of it. But Mercury is going to rule that communication, and writing is going to be included there. And because it's on the midheaven, that is it's the cusp of the 10th house, meaning that it is the career oriented house. So very interestingly, I use the Koch house system, and using the Koch house system, your Sun, Mars, Mercury, as well as Venus are all in the 9th house, which is the house of travel and education. It's also the house of divination and magic. So all those placements are in the house of divination and magic. And the midheaven and the 10th house here mark the career energies, and the ruler of the midheaven is in the house of career. And I think a lot of times when somebody has the ruler of the midheaven in the 10th, in that house of career, I do think it tends to produce a lot more often self-employed people, or people that have a lot more control or independence, perhaps, in the work that they do. Their work is more aligned. There isn't a it's like they've taken their work and the part of them that focuses on the work and really aligns it. And that tends to be more true for people that are self-employed. It can be true for, it can probably be true for anyone. I said that, and then I'm kind of like, maybe I need to backpedal a little bit. I'm trying to think how
Well,
many people.
I think over my lifetime, when I look at that, I've always been in the higher levels of management or executives or self-employed. Those are always been the places that I've been, is in that leadership, making decisions, having that flexibility to do that. So that's definitely been the role I've played since I was 18 years old.
Okay, good. Well, and a lot of that is the Capricorn energy too, which tends to be a little bit more corporate. If you had, Aries midheaven, there it would be a different story. So, but also, I mean, Saturn and Jupiter, which are two planets there in the 10th, they're both about authority. Saturn is the more strict rule setting authority, but Jupiter is the generous leader and wise leader type of authority. And so both of those together means that you can rule and be strict, but with a generous kind of a complement to it. And so yeah, that does not surprise me at all that you would have been immediately put into leadership positions for your whole career. So okay, so the 10th, so the 9th house we talked about as divination, the 10th house is career, and we see the leadership things, which is definitely something I wanted to talk about. And the midheaven itself represents what you're recognized for, what people most think of you. When they think of you, this is what they think of. It's like you receive your recognition, your accolades, your awards for this. And so what is that? First of all, it's Capricorn, which again is very business oriented and professional, but we've got Mercury right there. So your awards, your accolades, your recognition, how you're seen in the community is all going to be very mercurial. And Mercury rules magic. Mercury rules communication of all kinds, your podcast, the writing that you mentioned, all of that stuff is going to be right up there. And I believe that your podcast is award winning. And so we can see that is, it's very essential. Even if you hadn't gone into this field, if you'd gone into another field, you still would have been recognized and awarded for writing, communication, speaking, something like that.
Wow, very cool. Very cool.
So do you have any specific thoughts or questions that this is kind of stirring up?
No, I think that's awesome. Does our chart, Joy, show sometimes what our challenges might be in this lifetime?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is there are a number of things that we can look at for challenges. The two difficult planets are Saturn and Mars. You have the benefit of those two difficult planets both being well placed, and so that eases back on some of your challenges. You have a day chart, meaning you were born during the daytime. You were born in the afternoon in December. And so a day chart, Mars tends to be more difficult for you. So because Mars is only about 4 degrees away from your sun, that's Mars, the tick mark for Mars, that's a tick mark for the sun. Because it's so close, there could be a lot of instances of being angry at yourself, being frustrated at yourself. Mars is also, it's anger and frustration. It's also ambition and energy. And like I said, it is well positioned in Capricorn. So probably it's like when you get frustrated, you just double down on working harder at something. But because it's so close to the sun, there's a fair chance that at least in part of your life, there was a lot of anger towards yourself and frustration about not achieving your goals, because typically with that kind of placement, you're going to have really high goals, big goals. And if you don't reach it or don't reach it fast enough, you can probably get pretty frustrated with yourself.
So true.
And so some of the other things that we would look at to find challenges, I mean, square placements can represent challenges. You don't really, I mean, Mars here at 3 degrees of Capricorn is being marked as being square to the moon, but that I'm not even sure. That must be, oh, sorry. I was going to say that doesn't make any sense. It's Venus, sorry. When everything gets clumped together, it's hard to see. But Venus here, that makes so much more sense. Venus in Sagittarius is square to that moon in Virgo. That makes pretty good sense. Venus being love, relationships, beauty, friendships and connections with people, pleasure and enjoyment. That is at odds with your moon, which is in Virgo. And so the Venus in Sagittarius wants to try everything and meet everybody and know everything there is to know, and enjoy all of this variety, and Sagittarian adventure. Whereas the moon is like, no, I need to stay focused. I need to keep things tight. I need to make sure I'm following my routines and some of that kind of stuff. So that can be a challenge. Probably it's more like, you would, if you were taking a foreign trip, you would plan it really well and probably start to learn the language ahead of time and do things like that. It probably works together for you. Some people, there are just people that just live there. They really know how to make their chart work. And so when people are younger, they're still trying to figure out how to get these things to work together. And when you're older, it's just like, oh yeah, I figured that out. I've mastered that and I can make those things work together. Another thing that we would look to find a challenge is always very interesting to look at the Chiron placement. Chiron is the wounded healer, and it's a wound that you have that as you work on healing it within yourself, you're actually able to heal it in others. And for all of our and you can see we don't have a lot of water in the chart. This is fire, air, earth, and water. We don't have a lot of water, just that Neptune placement in Scorpio, as well as Chiron in Pisces. And so with water being a little bit weak in your chart, watery things, oddly, intuition is, you're very, very structured, and yet you teach magic and psychic modalities and focus on those things. So you've had to access your intuition from a different angle. And primarily it's all of that earth thing. You're probably one of those people that always is saying, I feel it in my bones type of thing, or I have to do it to connect with it, or I have to touch it to connect with it. Those are going to be more of those earth-based types of intuition. So with Chiron there, with the wound being in that watery Pisces, which is extremely spiritual, very much about divine connection, very much very empathic and Pisces energy really melds and meshes and melts into other energies. So there would be a wound there, which makes sense because with your moon in Virgo, your sun in Capricorn, you need to compartmentalize everything, and this needs to be here and this needs to be here, and that gives life the most sense to you. This is the one point, the one opportunity you have to let go of all of that and to just like drift off into meditation, or to really just like melt into another person. Now, interestingly, this is in your 11th house, using again the Koch house system. The 11th house, which is community and the friendship and community, it's kind of your tribe. And so curiously, it's like there's this wound that you have around I always say when I get to these parts in the chart, I'm like, I don't see this myself, but I have to tell you what it means, and maybe you will understand it. I'm just like, you don't have trouble building community. Look at your podcast. And yet at the same time, I mean, as soon as you started working in Denver, I just heard your name everywhere. So definitely you're good with community. But what I'm seeing is that there's still some kind of challenge around that, still some kind of a sense of wounding, that it hurts you to build community, that it hurts you with these deep connections, that something is there's a sense of some kind of loss. And so of course, as you work on healing that with yourself, you do heal others with that. And maybe that is maybe part of what, I mean, you're all about community. And so the only thing I can guess is that the reason your community is so strong and so powerful is that you have literally healed every member that wants to participate in your community, as you do so much extensive work on healing your own, whatever it might be, that made that a challenge for you in some way.
That's such a big aha moment. One of the things I dreamed of as a child was to be a minister. I always wanted to be a minister, which is very interesting if you think about being a minister or having a congregation. There are people in it, and then I ended up being opening the center, which is people in it. And what people don't understand is whether you're a leader, a healer, a teacher, whatever that is, none of us are perfect. We all have our shadow aspects, our light aspects. And so students or clients will come and expect perfection. And if some miscommunication happens, sometimes something's not really clear, people will leave the community because they're upset about something that they didn't talk to me about or share with me, to give me the opportunity to learn myself and to grow myself. And that wound hurts me more than anything. So by having a center and a community, yes, I have a big community. Yes, I can grow tribe. Yes, I'm passionate and loving with people. But what I found is miscommunication, or people's perception of who they think I am or what I am, causes them to leave without question. And that's a wound that I carry. So it's that water element of me, of it hurts so deeply when people leave the community, because I miss them and still love them, even though they're not around. So that's a big aha. So that does happen.
Wow.
Quite a bit, right? So
wow.
when I have students that take enough classes, I always say, if I say something or I do something that offends you or hurts you, please tell me, because I don't know if you don't tell me. I can't make it right if you don't tell me. If you walk away and not share that with me, you don't give me the opportunity for me to grow and evolve and learn, because we're all here to learn, and we're supposed to be non-judgmental, non-critical. We're supposed to be compassionate and understanding, because you don't know what's going on in my life. Truly, you don't walk in my shoes. I don't walk in your shoes. So holding space for people is something I'm really good at, because I don't think, honestly, people always hold space for each other. So
Yeah, so true, so true. And that's such a good example of that placement and the complexity of all the things that go on there. It's interesting because using whole sign houses, that Chiron goes into the 12th house, which is associated with spirituality, among other things. And so the idea, I think a lot of times when a placement, is in one house and one house system and a different house and another house system, I think a lot of times the two houses end up kind of blending and both being true in a lot of ways. And so the idea of building spirituality, building community, that they're really integrated for you, all of that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that's interesting is that the 12th house, besides representing spirituality, can represent exile or separation from the community. And so I'd be curious how that has played out in your life, and if you've needed, um, uh, if you've alternated big tribe building experiences and periods of your life with needing just time out and just needing to shut everything down and go off alone to meditate, contemplate, and things like that.
it's been really interesting. When I was 12 years old, I was very actively involved in a church, and it was like my heart and soul. And I held the hand of my boyfriend in church. And so my aunt came to me at one point and said I was no longer welcome in the church because I'd held a hand, and that I was no longer allowed to come. And so I was the leader over the youth group. I mean, I was really active at a very young age in the church. And so she refused to let me come to church anymore. And she was my drive to church. So being exiled was really, really hard. And then about 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, it was part of a class, a really involved class. And I got really sick. And our teacher's expectation was you had to be in class a lot. And I got really ill, and I lived on one side of Denver and school was on the other side. And I would get down on my knees in pain, and we didn't know what was going on. So there was a real fear of me driving to the other side of town and something happening, or me being on that drive and something happening, and me being, kind of out there and not being able to find. And so I hadn't gone to class because I was trying to figure out my health and get to where I felt confident that I could drive that far. And I got an email from Meetup saying, you're no longer part of this group. You're no longer welcome to be. And I got removed from the list.
Wow.
So that was really hard for me. And you're right. I stepped out of my spirituality both times for a while, questioning, what did I do to be treated that way? What did I do to be pushed out? What did I do to cause that? So when I built the community in Denver, it was really important for me for it to be inclusive. As long as you're not hurting somebody physically or emotionally, as long as you're not creating tons of drama, you're welcome here, no matter what you believe or think or your ideas. And I've had students come in that kind of throw people off a little bit because they're different. And I always say, nope, we're inclusive. They're accepting here. They have a place here. There's so few places for you to be welcomed and be part of, unless they do something terribly wrong. And I have walked people out of the center that are talking about doing spells or attacking people, and it's like, okay, this is not your place, you gotta leave, because that's not what we do here. But as long as people are genuine, authentic, they're not hurting anyone, they're always welcome. They're welcome to leave and come back at any time. They're welcome to join us at any time. I mean, that's a really big thing for me, because those are deep wounds of being pushed out, and I really don't think I deserved it. So
Yeah. Wow. Well, and that's such a good example of that placement and how that healing process really it was a wound for you, but it ultimately shifted from that. I was exiled twice from spiritual groups and shifted you so much more strongly into that I will build my own tribe where all are included and where all are healed. So brilliant, beautiful, beautiful, touching example. I love it.
well, I don't think any of us go through this life unwounded. I don't think any of us go through life without pains and wounds. And we need a place to heal. We need a place to rebuild, to find ourselves, to be authentic, right? It's really
Yeah.
important that we do that. And, honestly, I struggle with things, because when people get upset for some reason and I don't understand, I'm one of those people, should I avoid them because they don't want to see me? And so I want to make sure that they're taken care of. So I don't want to make them uncomfortable. Or should I go up and say, hey, I love you and I miss you, and make them, it's that balance. And I try to really honor where people are at. And if you're upset about something and you don't want to talk to me, I'm not going to force you. I'm not going to put you in that space where, hey, you need to talk to me. Right. But I think we've all had those wounds from school age through dating. Oh my gosh. Right. To
Right.
family drama, through friendships that have melted down and really hurt, miscommunication, misunderstandings, not taking a moment to think about, where that person is, what's going on with them in their lives, what might be happening on the back end that you don't know about.
Yeah.
Everybody has a bad day, and everybody has a day that they wish they could repeat and do differently. I think that's part of our human experience. And
Yeah. Yeah.
being a little bit compassionate and forgiving and understanding is something I think we all have a hard time with. And, it's definitely something I will work on for the rest of my life, because I think that's important. So you've given me many aha moments today in the chart. So thank you for that. It was like, oh, that makes total sense. And oh, that makes total sense. So what I would love to leave the listeners with, if you've never had an astrology reading, find someone you connect with and do an astrology reading. I'll be honest, I've had several over the years. Some weren't as fun and happy. I mean, I walked away more confused than I was when I came in. Some are very high level and hard to understand. Some are really practical. And if you're like me, I like to have things really practical. And Joy, thank you for sharing practical. And, the one thing that I've also learned is, as planets move and change in the system, they affect us. And you can look at a chart and see what might be happening during those times. So I know people will say, wow, I'm really struggling right now. Let me call my astrologer and find out what's going on. Because Joy mentioned earlier, people learn to work with their charts to understand what's happening. And an astrologer can really help you kind of understand, why has this been so difficult? What's going on in the planetary system as well as your chart. So reach out. And I know Joy does astrology readings online. So if you enjoyed today and would like to reach out, I'll definitely have her website along here and you can contact her. She is well known in Denver. Like, she had the largest tarot group here, and I still run into people that are like, I miss Joy. I wish Joy would come back. I miss Joy. She was well loved in the Denver area. And I know when she comes to Denver, she has to be fully booked of people going, I want to see you while you're here.
I'm gonna be in Denver in September.
All right. So
yeah, the first week in September. So yeah, definitely. I had kind of forgotten forgotten about that, but I'm like, because I was reading the like instructions for guests. It's like, tell people what's coming up for you. I'm like, I don't have anything coming up, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be in Denver in September. That's coming up.
So everyone that's listening that's in Denver, Joy's going to be here in September. So you might get an opportunity to really sit down and get to have a reading with her in person or meet with her. I'm sure she'll have opportunities where people can come to meet. The other thing she does really well is tarot classes and learning tarot. So if that's an interest, I know she does all that online as well. So you can connect in. I also hear about how great of a teacher she is. So one of our readers in our center is Cynthia Wamo, and she is a fan of Joy's. Because she's like, Joy, so I'm that way too. So she has a fan club, folks, a big fan club.
That's awesome. Yes, Cynthia was definitely a very, very active member of our community with the tarot tarot meetup and all of that stuff. So I have many fond memories of those good old days.
Well, Cynthia and Sherry, that's how I met both of them, was at your tarot meetup group. I got to meet both of them and became very fond of both of them from that group. So yeah, definitely so. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. This was so much fun. I had fun. I hope you had fun. I had a blast.
Definitely had fun.
I was so excited today. Well, you have an amazing day, and thank you so much. And I hope that we'll cross paths in September, figure out something, because when you're in town, well, hopefully I can break away and just come and get to see you. So we'll see how all that works out.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that. That'd be fabulous. So we'll get together and look at some dates and things.
All right, that'll be a lot of fun. Thank you for those that are watching, listening on your favorite channel. Make sure you like and comment. Let us know what you thought about the podcast, what you got of it. We always love to hear your feedback. And I hope that you have a sacred and magical day and that we'll see you really soon.